Hey folks, Andy here, thanks for joining me. Right, just recently I seem to have seen a lot of stuff on YouTube about the good old debate on gain staging when you are doing digital recording work. And the two sides of it say, yes, you need to gain stage, it's the way it's always been done in the analog world, it's the best. And the other says, yeah, but it doesn't really matter because you've got so much headroom in the digital system. You can talk about this endlessly, or you can give it a go and see. So let's do a little experiment. Right, this is a Cubase 12 project. I have imported a drum track. If we have a quick look at how I've got that routed, there is no direct routing, but I have set up two identical buses, drums A and drums B, which you can see down here on the mixer. If I start the track running, what you're going to hear is this track played first of all through this bus, and then through this bus. And you should hear those as being identical. If I bring both buses into play, it's going to get louder because we're now summing the output of both of these buses. The button down here is marked phase. It's really polarity, but let's stick with what they've called it. I'm going to now invert the phase of drums B, and we see what happens, and that level on the output quickly drops to absolutely zero. And that is because as these two tracks are playing back identically, but we've inverted one against the other, they're perfectly cancelling out. If I change the level a little bit on one of these, they're no longer identical, and we get some signal coming through. Balance them again, and boom, silence. If I take off the phase reversal, we now get the two tracks summed together, and we get them adding rather than subtracting against each other, and we get a bigger signal. Okay, I'm going to mute this one for a second, so muting B, and then I'm going to go in and I'm going to whack the gain slider all the way up to plus 48 dB. I will have to do something with this video once it's made because I don't want to damage anybody's gear or ears. But we've now got on the input of drums B, we've got plus 48 dB. And if I add those two together now, it's gone pretty loud, pretty horrible. Right, we added 48 dB onto drums B at the beginning of the track, at the beginning of the channel. I'm now going to subtract 48 dB at the end. And if we give that just a moment, that will process itself, that level will come down, and that should now be sounding as it was before I added the 48 dB on here. And we can test it by doing the old phase inversion again. Invert the phase, watch what happens at the summed level, and it is dropped to nothing. There you go. Dropped down to absolutely nothing, which shows us that this channel with plus 48 on the front end and minus 48 on the back end gives us the same result as doing nothing at the front and nothing at the back. So we've massively overloaded that channel and then recovered it just by dropping the level. Let's take this a step further. I'm going to take my output, and instead of going to the output bus, I'm going to go to drums up 1. Right, there's drums B, 48 dB on there, and I'm going to balance that channel out. So we're hearing drums A, we're hearing drums A and drums B, and drums B is now powering plus 48 dB of drums B, plus 48 dB on drums up 1. Oop, no. There we go, plus 48 dB on drums up 1. So now everything is completely, needles bending sort of thing. We've got 96 dB cranked through that channel. So let's go minus 96. Again, we'll give it a moment just to settle in. So again, just to recap, we've gone plus 48 on the input of drums B, output is set at 0, another 48 dB on the input of up 1, and minus 96, which is 48 plus 48, on the output of drums up 1, and look where we are. Once again, we are back to complete silence, which is proving that the output of drums up 1 with 96 dB added to it, and then 96 dB taken off right at the end, is exactly the same as the unaffected drums A. So you don't just have a little bit of extra headroom on this system. Now, just to see what we've got set up here, if I go to Studio Setup, and we can see that I am using 32-bit float. There's an option for 64-bit, but this is just the basic 32-bit float. So there you go. The arithmetic works pretty well. And I'm now going to put a plugin in here. This is a plugin that doesn't have any analog emulation on it. I'm not even going to set an EQ on it. I just want to have it inserted there. Then I'm going to bring drums B back in and see what happens. And that has cancelled all the way down. So we can see that just inserting that Waves plugin hasn't done anything. If I go in and actually change something on it, you can see that we're now back in the realms of getting signal through. If I copy that and move it to drums up 1, where it's getting a really big signal in there, and even there, Q2 on drums up 1, we are still cancelling back absolutely perfectly. I am pretty impressed with that, I have to say. And I am now going to instantiate an API EQ. And there you can see that because that has got emulation of circuitry which responds to input level, that even just putting that in with 0 dB is making a difference. That's with the analog bit turned off. Right, I'm now going to put the same plugin on my drums up 1. API 50, and see what happens. And look at that. Even with that massive old signal powering into it, with everything pegged out, we're still getting perfect cancellation between the 96 dB up, 96 dB down, and the original drums A channel. So that is really quite surprising. That is really surprising. Bring that back in, and let's put in the analog on and the right analog on both of those, and it's not quite cancelling. Analog off and analog off, and yeah, you can see we're collapsing back down to nothing. Right, the last thing I'm going to do is put a compressor. Now, this is a compressor, for goodness sake. This has got to make a difference. So drums A, remember this is at the original level. I'm seeing that much gain reduction, and on my drums up I'm seeing utter and complete destruction in there. Right, I think we've got a few conclusions we can draw from that. One is that I think as long as you're using a relatively modern, well-coded DAW, and I'm going to say maybe one that's using floating point arithmetic on the audio engine, then I think you can probably do pretty much whatever you like, just as far as levels go. You can drive the level up, and then just pull it down, recover it all at the last stage by pulling the final fader down. A couple of provisos that have to go with that. One is that in some cases, the level that you're driving into plugins is going to change the sound of the plugins, and you would certainly be expecting this in the case where you've got maybe a plugin which is emulating analog gear that's perhaps coded to respond to input levels. Now, you've got to be a little bit careful. I was a little bit surprised by what I found there when I did the Waves API plugin, that the plugin itself behaved really well so far as the level goes, but that kind of does suggest that it's not doing an emulation of the real device, which would overload gracefully and graciously and add stuff to the sound. It's not doing that when the analog button or switch is off. And when the analog switch is on, it almost seems as though it's just generating some random noise in there. It's not really doing an overload thing. So it's worth doing a little experiment just to sort of see what you come out with. But certainly I was surprised with the clarity and the cleanness of the handover from the Steinberg audio engine to the plugins and back. That all seemed to work remarkably well. Now, obviously, when you're doing something which is definitely level dependent, like the compressor, then you are going to get massive amounts of difference. And yet, sure, if you whack super high levels into your compressor, you're going to lose the adjustability that goes with it. The other thing to bear in mind is that you are going to lose your metering. Meters are absolutely no good to anybody when they're just pinned into the red, needles whacked over to the far right-hand side. So that is something to keep in mind. Bottom line when it comes to this is, personally, I believe in gain staging. I think it takes very little effort to do it, to get it right. I stick BU meters on my channels, and then I just skip them about as I'm using them. And I tend to work at round about the good old 0 VU equals minus 18 dB full scale. And that works really well for me. It also has the benefit that if at some point I want to bypass some processing to get an idea of what it's doing, I'm not suddenly getting massive jumps in level, which are really, really confusing to the ears. So there you go. Gain staging. Do you do it? Do you not do it? Maybe stick a comment down below. If this stuff is useful, I would really appreciate it if you could give us a thumbs up. Maybe hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button so you get notified when future videos come out. I'm Andy Picker. This is the Dust Bowl Audio. Look after yourselves, and I will see you next time out. Bye for now.